Hey friend, welcome back to the Friend Zone. I hope that you have been enjoying every episode as they have been coming out. I have definitely been enjoying making them and interacting with you guys in the comments. I appreciate you guys for showing up with me along this journey. It is definitely one for the records. Before I get started in today's episode, I wanted to say, listen, y'all blew my mind this week. Well, last week, I had last week I made it to 50 subscribers, and I was like lit about my 50. Okay, and so that was on Monday or Sunday or Monday that I had started. I made it to 50 subscribers, and then I was on my way to an event with my friend, and I was like, I don't know what about our conversation made me check it. Something we was talking about something, and so I was probably gonna tell her about my future subscribers. So when I opened it up, I was like, bro, I got 70 subscribers, and so I was shocked and excited at the same time. And then I was talking to my daughter, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna make a post about my 70, right? And then I was talking to my daughter, and I was like, I got 70 subscribers, and she was like, what? No way. Let me see. So I pulled it up and it was at 73. So listen, I appreciate you. Every person that was already subscribed, thank you for showing up along the way. And also, I want to welcome and appreciate all of my new subscribers. So as of today, I have 115 subscribers. So from that point to this point, I've grown by over 30 subscribers, and it just keeps going up. So listen, we're gonna keep showing up um every week, and I'm excited, but I'm nervous and scared as well. Like, it would be a lie if I didn't say that. Like, as the subscribers was coming, I was like, now wait a minute, God, like, this is not what we agreed to. Like, I said yes because it was like a leaving the 99 to get the one situation, and I'm really feeling like what's happening. Like, I don't know why in my mind I thought that, we're getting the one, right? Like, we're getting the one that left, and that's it. And so I'm like, oh yeah, we're getting the one. So we're gonna have one follower, and that one follower or subscriber is gonna see, and the Lord will save them, and boom, like, that's what's gonna happen, and then the kingdom rejoices. Right? So that is kind of what I was imagining in my mind. Like, yeah, I'm trying to get the one, and I know my friends and family would support and stuff, obviously. They do that. But like, to get to 115 subscribers within my first month, like, I'm blown away. I'm blown away. I thank you guys for showing up for me. I thank you guys for showing up with me week after week. And I hope that, you continue to show up and continue to enjoy the episodes. And so, if you're not already, if you are new here, you can follow me at Now Friend 89 on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So it is Now Friend 89 on all of those channels, and we can interact there as well. So thank you guys again. I'm so excited uh, and nervous, terrified even about this journey. But thank you guys for showing up with me. Now, friend, this is my third time recording this episode. Okay, let me tell you something, Lucy. I was not trying to be keep on doing this for 6 hours now. So usually I record for about 2 hours, and then by the time I finish editing and cuts and all of that kind of stuff, like, it ends up being like anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour, which I was supposed to be trying to do 30-minute episodes. But anywho, this is my third time here on this couch about this topic. It's a very difficult topic for me to discuss for a few reasons. Like, it's vulnerability for me, and I wrestle with the aspect of being vulnerable with strangers, right? Like, with the world, about some things that I may not have even shared with my family before, and then there's a fine line, I think, between telling a story where I have experienced forgiveness, where I have given forgiveness, where I have given grace, and then also telling that story for the healing of others. And so I'm trying to also walk that delicate line, the tension, if you will, between telling that story, showing grace, and honoring the people who have walked that journey with me. And so I think, that's probably been the most difficult part. And so just reviewing all of the footage that I already created and recorded, I just wanted to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to honor the people that have been on this journey with me. Starting this podcast was really difficult. Um, for me, it was just like, you know, a big jump. Being able to share your vulnerability with strangers. Once you put something online, it lasts forever. Even if you take it down, like people, the screenshot game is quick, right? And so, like, just the consciousness of knowing that once I post this, it's out there forever. What if I misspeak? What if someone misunderstands? What if, you know, uh, anything, right? Like, what if I'm misinformed about something, or like any type of risks that could occur are constantly on my mind, and I'm always thinking about them. And so, like, getting on, the edge of that cliff and jumping into the unknown, right? Like letting God order your steps and being obedient to what He's asking of you and what He's calling you to is scary. Um, and so tonight's episode is actually one of those things that, I've battled with. This is my third time recording this episode. I reviewed it and recorded it and reviewed it and watched it and all of that stuff like several times, and just trying to get through my thoughts on it, making sure that I honor those who were on this journey with me, my life's journey, right? Like my real life's journey, like the people that have lived this story in real life, in real time. Trying to make sure that I honor them, but also understanding the tension between the need for transparency and healing, and also grace and forgiveness that I've had for them. And so I wanted to be sure that I took the time to, you know, be sensitive to that, as well as be open, because I do feel like our culture will die in silence. Like, we experience things. We're all like living similar lives. Like, if you ever notice when you talk with someone about a story, sometimes they're like, oh, I went through that too, or that happened to me too, or I experienced it. I have a friend that experienced it. Like, we're living similar stories. But what the enemy desires to do is to isolate us, isolate our stories, isolate our testimonies, make you feel like you're alone, like God don't love you, like you're experiencing that and no one else is experiencing that. And so I feel like, especially in Black culture, we don't share enough. We don't share enough of our trauma. We don't share enough of our experiences. We don't share enough of our healing journey. We don't do enough to heal so that it doesn't follow the generations to come, right? Like, I really wish that we felt more comfortable in doing that. And so I don't want my experiences, my hurt, my pain, my trauma to die with me and live on through me, right? Like, through my generations, through the child that I have, or the children that are to come. I don't want that to end here. Like, I don't want the, let me say, the wisdom gained, I don't want the wisdom gained from those experiences to die with me. Like, I have these experiences, I have these encounters, I have I have overcome these hurdles. And if I don't share my experience, if I don't share the knowledge gained, if I don't share the wisdom, if we don't share as a culture the wisdom, the knowledge gained in those circumstances, and it dies with you, it just lives on through you. Because when you are hurt people hurt people. Like, how does that affect your kids? How does that affect your spouse? How does that affect your friendships? How does that affect the people that you encounter every day? Like, anybody, any normal random person, like if you're experiencing something, you're having a hard day, you're having a rough day, like everybody getting it. The cashier at Walmart getting it, the cashier at Target, the people at the gas station, like everybody is getting whatever is causing you that pain and hurt, and it is exuding and bleeding out into the people and the things that surround you. And so I think that if we do not share our experiences, and how we healed and how we overcame, the Bible says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. And so I really believe that the enemy in this season desires to shut our testimony up, so that others cannot glean and overcome from our experiences and our wisdom gained. Like, you can learn from others' mistakes. You can learn from others' experiences. You can, but you can only do that if it's shared. And so I think by way of shame, the enemy works overtime to shut down what we can share, to shut down what we can grow from, to shut down what we can learn, because we're like, oh, I'm ashamed that I had that experience. I'm ashamed that that happened to me. I'm ashamed, that this was my encounter with that person, or this was my encounter at work, or that I made this mistake, or that I fell in this way, that I went left when I should have went right. Like, he wants to isolate us and make us feel like God don't care about you. You're the only one experiencing that. You're the only one going through that. You're the only one having those feelings. You're the only one depressed. You're the only one isolated. It's you, and he puts those things back on you when that's not the case. Like, there are other people that are living similar experiences, similar lives, similar lifestyles, or that have lived and have overcome similar things, similar lifestyles, similar traumas. And so the enemy wants to shut us down and close us off to each other from sharing, from growing, from gaining that knowledge, right, from other people's experience. And then he just keeps us bound generation after generation into those same traumas and those same issues, as opposed to us being able to share and heal from that. And so that's kind of what my episode today is about, is me sharing some of my experience, and how I have healed from it. And so my scripture today, it comes from Ephesians 4:31 and 32, and this is the English Standard Version. It says, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving to one another, as God in Christ forgave you. And so I chose that scripture because, like, I wanted to highlight how important God thinks that it is for us to be intentional about putting away those things, that bitterness, that wrath, that anger, slander, all of those things, malice. He wants us to put those things away, because it's important. And these are things that he has put away. And so he says to be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving to one another, as God in Christ forgave you. And so I think a lot of times we have these experiences and we have these encounters, and they create these barriers in us of bitterness and wrath and anger and non-forgiveness and all of that stuff. Like, we don't forgive ourselves, we don't forgive the people that have inflicted the pain on us. And so we live that, right? Like, we learn to live with it. We don't heal from it, we don't grow from it, we don't develop. We just learn to deal, as opposed to learning to heal. So we learn to deal with the pain, we learn to deal with the trauma, we learn to deal with the emotional barriers, all of that, right? We learn those things. And so my episode today is called Now Friend, Put It Away. And so it's about putting away the bitterness, putting away the wrath, putting away the malice, putting away those deep, dark things that you have kind of closed off. And so you've put them away on the inside, but you haven't put them away properly. And so every now and again, somebody will come by and tap that thorn, and you respond in pain, and you respond in heartache, and you respond in trauma, and so that's not God's desire for us. And so we'll kind of talk about some of those things today. And so hurt people, right? I think I said it earlier. Like, hurt people. And I think we've all heard that saying. But what does it mean? Like, what does it mean that hurt people will hurt people? And it's just like, I don't know if you ever heard anybody, I'll get my lick back. Like when you're a kid, somebody hits you, you hit them back. Like, someone hurts you when you hurt them back. What about the hurts that people don't know are there? Like, we triggered. It's a word. It's a buzzword for our culture and society right now, being triggered and being traumatized and all of that kind of stuff. So, like, those things happen because we have those traumas that are put away or hidden, rather, but we haven't really necessarily packed them away appropriately. So when you say hurt people, like, what does that mean for my spouse? What does that mean for my family, the people that I interact with, the people that I grow with every day? Like, what does that mean? It means that, like, they're walking around on eggshells because I'm hurt, and they know, like, don't do this because that's going to cause her to do that, or don't say this, that's going to cause them to respond this way. Like, you don't want the people that you love to be walking around on eggshells, afraid to step on any landmine that you have um, concealed and hidden away. And so, as we walk through this episode, I want to aim to take kindly to the words that we read from Ephesians 4 and 31 and 32. And that's to be tenderhearted and kind, even as I unravel my own story. That I'm still working through, right? But I'm working. Like, I'm trying to be cognizant of the pain and the response of my story, and the impact that it can have, the impact it has on me, the impact it has on my family, the impact that it might have on you. And so as we walk through this journey and through this story, like, I want to extend grace, and I want to extend and I have extended grace, and I have extended forgiveness. And so I just want to be, reminded of that. And I want y'all to be reminded of that too. As I share this story, some of you guys may know the characters and some of you may not. And so, just being cognizant of the fact that, in this season, we are working on being tenderhearted and kind, and we are forgiving like Christ has. So, a little bit of backstory for you guys. So I've never met my biological dad. I believe that he was around and in my life uh, up until I was like 2, and then something happened that caused him to not be around anymore. And so I was raised primarily uh, by my mom and my sister's dad, who I call daddy. So I still call him daddy, like, right today. So he raised me for a large chunk of my life. And like from 3 on until 18. And so we had a big falling out when I turned 18, but we will get there, okay, friends. So from 3 to 18, he was in my life. He was a consistent part of my life. Um, he was my dad, he was my daddy. And so, he raised me like his own. I remember him being a provider. I remember him being a a a caring guy. Like, I remember him um like doing little stuff like we used to live across the street from my school, and I had a bike, and he would like let me ride my bike to school. Like he would walk me to school, let me ride my bike to school, and then he would drag the bike back. Like at this point, I'm like 4 or 5 in kindergarten, and he would let me ride my bike to school every morning. Maybe not every morning, but I remember him letting me ride my bike to school and then dragging the bike back. Like I remember those kind of memories. Like he was a good guy. We had some good memories. We had some fun times. I remember him being a great provider. And that's not to say that my mom didn't work. I don't really know the dynamic of who paid bills and how that was, and was they 50-50, and did they date at the Cheesecake Factory? Child, I don't know. So but I know that my mom did work, and I know that he worked as well. But I remember him distinctly buying nice things, right? Like, they drove nice cars. Like, me and my sister, we wore the Jordans and the name brand clothes and all of the things, right? Like, we had the big TV and stuff like that. And so, I remember him providing, and I know that he had, um, and I know that he had a trucking business. I remember him having his trucking business for as long as I can remember back. I don't really remember him ever having like a regular 9 to 5 job. I always remember him having his own business, and so he was a provider. Like that's what I remember about him. Like he bought us all anything. Like there wasn't anything that I could think of that I wanted in that season of my life that he didn't buy or provide for us. Now, on the other side of that coin, I remember that he was an authoritarian, and so he was a big guy, very much a big dog with a big bite. Okay, um, and so he definitely was a big guy. Like I'm 4'11" now in my adult life, and so I was much smaller as a kid. And I don't know, if I'm guessing he got to be like 5'11", 6 feet tall, and he was a big guy, like a solid guy. Like he was huge. And so he was very much so like, the dad that speaking, you get yourself together, like, oh, let me straighten up, right? And so I know that he was rough, and he grew up like in the rougher parts of Dallas, like East Dallas and all of that kind of stuff. I don't really know much about his childhood, but I know his mom, like she kept us, like she babysat us. We didn't go to daycare. Um, Maybe later in life. I do remember going to daycare, but a lot later. But I remember my grandparents, his mom, and my great grandmother, and even my grandmother. Like they kept us, they babysat us, all of that kind of stuff. So we primarily stayed with them. And so I remember his mom. She was a no nonsense grandmother, like backhanding, you getting a whooping, all of that kind of stuff. And so I imagine that she was that way with them growing up. And so I know he had 6 siblings, 5 boys and 1 girl. Because they was my aunts and uncles, so I knew them. We lived close. We lived close in proximity. We were always there. Like my auntie used to come pick us up on the weekends, and she lived in a big house in the suburbs. See, at this time we lived still in the hood. We lived in Pleasant Grove, Texas, and so she lived in a suburb. And so she used to come and pick us up. And she had a big house, and she worked at Frito Lay. She had all the chips and all the snacks and all of that stuff. So we lived for her to come and pick us up. And so I remember that about my childhood. Like we was always over aunts and uncles' house, always with our cousins on both my daddy's side and my mom's side. Like we was always together all the time. Like we just had a very tight knit family. And so I do remember though, like they used to argue and fight all the time. Like the siblings used to argue and fight all the time. Like my mom and my dad used to argue and fight all the time. And like I said, he was a big dog with a big bite. And so his voice carried, and it was very strong, and it was very much so like I said what I mean, and I mean what I say. So it wasn't just me that feared him. Like I could definitely tell that other people around, like they knew him. They knew what he was about and all of that kind of stuff. So I definitely feared him in my in my childhood life. But like I said, he was my daddy, you know. Um, so there was a fine line, you know, between him being my daddy and then him being my daddy. Like, and so any little thing, any one thing could trigger that. And so I talked earlier about grace and forgiveness and stuff. And so I think now in my adult life, where as a child I really didn't understand him. In my adult life I can understand how my own stuff can impact the way that I respond to my kid. And so what I mean by that is I don't know what he encountered in his childhood. I don't know what he encountered growing up. You know, I just know kind of like the demeanor of his mom, and I know his dad was kind of in and out but not around all the time. I know he grew up in the streets. I know he was a street guy, you know, for some time in his life and stuff like that. And so I feel like that had caused him to develop a hard and harsher exterior. Definitely probably had some trust issues and things like that. And so that caused him to become who he became, you know. um and so I think that's a protection mechanism that maybe he developed over time to keep himself safe, to keep his feelings and emotions safe, and all of that kind of stuff. And so thinking back to that now as an adult, like, I can extend grace to him, um for his issues that he has exuded on me now as a parent, because I get it a little bit. And so with that being said, that he was an authoritarian, like he was definitely sparing the rod, spoiling the child. And so I remember the stress of living there, like daily trying to make it without getting a whooping. And whooping would be putting it mildly, right? Like just trying to do the right thing as a kid. Like, he was in my life since I was 3. So and we lived in the same house probably from maybe 3 to somewhere between 6, 7, and 8. Like, I don't really remember the exact time frame of him and my mom separating, but we lived in the same house for that time. And so I remembered every day waking up, the daily stress of like just trying to stay on the line, on the right side, right? Like trying to not get in trouble, trying to not get a whooping, trying to not get yelled at, trying to not, you know, feel the wrath. Like, and so it was a stressful situation for a kid, you know, to endure and experience. And so I think like we have to be cognizant of that. Like, what is it like growing up in the house with us, you know, as parents? Like, are you causing your kids to have to walk on eggshells? Like, I don't want to trigger them. I don't want to set them off on a rampage and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think that it's necessary or fair for children to grow up in a household where they are afraid of, you know, taking one turn and life crumbling and blowing up. You know, like, that's a hard life to live. And speaking from a kid that has kind of lived that life, and the stress of trying to, like, you ain't know, as adults, they didn't verbalize that trauma or that hurt, like, or like, don't do this because it's gonna cause me to do that. But trying to figure out, like, whoa, what did I do to cause that response? What did I do to get a whooping for that? What did I do? You know, what did I do? Like, how, what happened? You know, just trying to figure that out. Like, just trying to get it together and understand as a kid from your childlike mind. You know what I'm saying? You don't have the experiences necessary to verbalize what's happening, what you're feeling, what's being experienced. And then even noticing now, like, adults don't necessarily always have that ability to verbalize what's happening, what has happened, what's hurting them. They don't have that, you know. And so I like while I lived a good life, like I remember that Christmases were big and presents were big and everything was over the top and birthdays and holidays and all of that kind of stuff. I remember those things being big staples and big things in my life. Um, but even more so, I remember waking up on the edge every day, trying to make sure that I did the right thing. And so I remember one time my sister, she had to be like one or two, and she was drinking some milk and she wasted the milk, and I don't know, like I don't think that she had a sippy cup. Like I don't know if that was, I don't know when sippy cups came out, okay, but it was a cup without a top on it, and she definitely knocked it off of her little baby stand or whatever, and wasted the milk. And so then I ended up getting a whooping because he said if I would have been watching her, she wouldn't have wasted the milk. And so, trying to reconcile those kind of things, like, um, in my mind, like, what could I have done differently? You know what I'm saying? What could I have done differently to prevent that, so that so it don't happen again, so I don't get a whooping again? Like trying to think and process that as a 3, 4, 5 year old kid, that's a lot, and it can be stressful, and I know, like, I don't know where he was in the pecking order, and I'm just kind of unraveling a little bit, like where that might have came from him, but like I think he was like the oldest or one of the oldest kids. So maybe that was something, you know what I'm saying, that he observed like as a kid, like he should be watching his siblings, and when his siblings did something wrong, like maybe he got in trouble. Like that's kind of how things get passed down, and in people's responses come from previous and prior generations into their own kids. And so in those experiences, I remember like living that experience like with my mom present, right? Like I remember I was getting a whooping one time and she was there. I don't remember if she was always there, but I remember this particular time she was there, and uh, I was I was looking. Now, see, I done recorded this 3 times and I ain't cried damn time. And so I was looking and she was there. And I was like, just wanting her to save me. Like, I felt like I was getting a whooping for something that was unjust. Like, I wasn't a bad kid. Now, I was a bad teen, but I wasn't a bad kid. And, I was on A on a roll and all of that stuff. And like, I just didn't get in trouble. I remember my teachers loving me loving my teachers, them giving me great reports. Like I didn't really start having those problems in school until like high school. And so, but I remember like just thinking like, help, you know what I'm saying? Like this is wild, and just wanted her to step in and protect me. And I didn't feel protected. And so I think that that's why I woke up with that stress every day of like trying to figure out how I could uh, protect myself by not doing something, right? Like, not like, what am I doing to bring this on to myself? Like, what can I do differently to grow, so that I'm not getting a whooping every day. And but even like talking about like being kind and extending grace to her in a moment, like now that I'm on the other side of that path, walking through like being a mom and having a kid that has a dad and a stepdad that discipline or want to discipline and stuff like that. Like I understand now the art not the artist. It's not artistic at all. But trying to figure out like the line between allowing staying out of it and letting the dad or the stepdad discipline the child and figuring out where to get in. And so that's a part of my trauma response, right? Is I don't want my daughter to feel unprotected. I don't want her to be looking like save me or feeling like save me. You're my mom. You should protect me. And I never come to her rescue. And so it causes problems, like it causes issues. And so like even with her dad, and like he's not even really a disciplinarian like that, like he don't ride her tough, or anything. But if he's like, if he get the going too much, I'd be like, all right, that's we good. That's enough. And the same thing with my own husband. Like, I know that both of them care for her and love her, and um take care of her. Like they raise her. Um, like take care of her, like they raise her, and they're her dad. They like my husband is a dad, her dad is a dad. Like my husband been around her since she was 2. And so like, but that does still translate in my life. Like it does still come up. Like I do still get triggered by some of that stuff, because I'm just like, I don't want her to ever feel like, Mom, why don't you come to my rescue? Like, I never want that for her. And so, but I understand the line of trying to let, the dad be the dad, and trying to stay out of it, not interfere, but still make the child feel supported. And so, I get that now. And then too, just like thinking through like how, she may have felt in those moments, and her own trauma responses. Like I don't necessarily know all of the things. I know a lot of the things, but I don't know all of the things that she experienced, and how that creates and builds up responses in her, like understanding and recognizing that the way that she thinks and the way that she processes is not just her knowing everything and knowing how to be in life, but also a compilation of her own experiences and her own trauma and her own hurt and her own pain. And so I think and that's why I think as a adult, or as a parent rather, I think it's so important that we I think it's so important that we communicate with our children our struggles, because I think as a kid I had the perspective of my mom, that she knew everything, right? Like that's she very much gave that energy, like of togetherness. Like I got it together. Like everything that is happening is intentional. Like everything that like my life is structured this way, and this is how it's happening. Like she very much gave that energy of, yeah, like this is together. So I'm like, so in my mind as a kid, like I'm like, oh, she want this. Like, you know what I'm saying? She this is the way she wanted to be. Not now understanding, like as an adult now, nothing happens the way that I'm expecting it to happen. Like none of the responses are coming the way that I want them to come, and none, but a lot of the outcomes, like I don't have any control over, and things like that. And so from my outlook as a kid, thinking that adults had everything all together and everything that was working because that's the way that they wanted it, to now being an adult and walking a mile in adult shoes and realizing, like, child, nothing happens, barely, rarely happens as I'm expecting, as I'm planning. Like there's always some surprise, there's always some unexpected um turn or outcome, right? And so just kind of understanding that from that perspective, from from a child to now being a mom. And so and not just a mom, but now being an adult, and understanding like this isn't turning out and panning out in the way that I planned or expected. And so unpacking like the response of my mom and um, her quietness during those situations. Like as a kid, I felt like she was consenting to the things that were taking place. But as an adult, I feel like, what was the tension she was experiencing, right? Like trying to measure the line of say something interfere and the fallout that was to come. Because while we had some great memories as a family, like the arguments were brutal. Um like they were tough to experience, they were tough to encounter, they were tough to live through. And so I think just understanding like my mom's thought process and what it must have been like to live through that, and also like the like I said, the tension of trying to protect your child and trying to keep your marriage together. And there's so many things, right, like that go into all of that. um as a married person now, like marriage is hard. It's not easy. It's not simple. Like sometimes you just don't feel like fighting. And especially if you fighting all the time, like what is, you know, what picking your battles, right? Like what is the thing that is worth fighting for in this moment and in this time? And so I think, just going in what she might have been experiencing in that time, um, as she was having her own fears and her own issues and her own trauma and whatever else may arise during those moments, like how she unpacks that. And so understanding like what she must have been feeling and experiencing, like knowing who she is and who she has been in my life today. um like I'm sure that must have been a hard situation for her, trying to figure out and toeing the line, um, between protection and support to him, and what's best for the kid and what's best for the child. And so I believe that when hurt doesn't heal, it becomes a cycle. It becomes a cycle for us. It becomes my response becomes a cycle, and then my kids observationally learn to pick up those habits, and then it becomes a cycle for them, and then that's how we end up calling things that are recurring generational curses when really it's generational passed down. And so I want to use that to segue into me today as a parent. Well, not today. Let me start from when I first became a parent. And so when I had my daughter, I used to whoop her all the time, the same way, right? Like literally, like there was no conversation. I hated the fact that I used to get whoopings all the time as a kid. I absolutely hated it. I despised it. I had trauma about it, and all of that kind of stuff. And even still with that, I still, when I had my daughter and she would do something, I would immediately be with her all the time. And now it wasn't every day, and I don't think that it was excessive, but that was my response to everything. Like if she did something wrong, it really wasn't no conversation. It really wasn't, even when she was younger, like it wasn't any of that. It was just immediately, oh, you getting a whooping. Like you getting a whooping when we get home. I know everybody done had that call with their mama, like, oh, they acting like that at school. Oh yeah, you getting a whooping when you get home. So that's what my life began. Like I immediately picked it up. And my grandma, she even used to say, that child is scared of you. She don't need to be fearing you like that. And I was like, no, honey. No, honey, because I am 4'11" and I'm little and I need to get this in order right now. And so I felt like that because people used to always say, um, I was a terror as a teen. People would say, "Ooh, you gonna that child gonna pay you back everything you gave your mom," and all of that kind of stuff. And I was horrible. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm little. I'm 4'11", honey. She got to learn to respect me at a young age, so that when she grow up, this fear is gonna carry her through the rest of the years." And so, like that was my perspective at that time, right? Like that I don't know. I don't even know where I developed that from, but that was my thought. That was my thought process, and that was what I did. Like she did something, she got a whooping, and so that was something that I developed and learned observationally, right, from me growing up. Like when I did something, even when I didn't do nothing, I got a whooping. So if I did something that was perceived wrong or had a negative connotation, then I got a whooping, and so that's what I carried on into my relationship with my daughter, and I don't know exactly what the turning point was for that, but at some point, right, within like the last 7, 8 years, I shifted. Like I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit. I don't know if I heard someone on the radio. I don't know if I don't know if I read a book. Like I don't really know exactly what the shift was, but there was a shift in my perspective and what I thought about parenting because number one, I wasn't getting the results that I desired. Like I was whooping all the time, but like she wasn't learning no lessons. And then too, like she wasn't a bad kid either. Like I mean, she had a few little, big things. Um, like she had, a temper tantrum once before, but that was totally my mom's fault for coddling her and empowering her in that moment. Um, but like she wasn't a bad kid. Like she was pretty well behaved. She was pretty obedient. But it was the same thing. Like I was just whooping her all the time. And but I felt like she wasn't learning any lessons. Like we was having to have the same conversations about her attitude and whatever, right? Like she's the only child, so she got her way often and stuff and so yeah, so we was having the same conversations over and over and over. And I'm like, we're not learning nothing. We're not getting nowhere. And so I shifted my method and my mode of discipline from just automatically whooping her to evaluating the situation and determining what kind of lesson that I was trying to teach in the midst of it. And so I want to be very clear that this is not an anti-whoop your kids campaign, okay? Because I do believe that corporal discipline done in taste is appropriate at times. But I think that there are studies that show, the negative effects of constantly whooping your kids. It makes them more aggressive. Like it creates, issues in their ability to process and their ability to process anger and all of that kind of stuff. Like there are studies and all kinds of books and things like that that tell us that whooping our kids probably isn't the best mode of discipline, or let me say consistently always like letting that be your only mode of discipline, or even other things like aggression and yelling and screaming and all of that kind of stuff. Like those are negative things, that depending on the child, like they don't process well. And every kid doesn't need to be disciplined in the same way. Every kid doesn't need to get the same conversation. Every kid doesn't need to get a whooping. Every kid doesn't need to be yelled and screamed at. Some kids will just do what you say when you say it. You know what I'm saying? And so like just finding that line of who is your kid, how do you love your kid, how does your kid receive love, how does your kid receive discipline, like all of those things play a role in the way your kid grows up and processes hurt, pain, trauma, all of that stuff. And so at the time that I had started out with Kennedy and whooping her, all of that kind of stuff, like there was not a conversation with me and my daddy, and where he was like, "Oh, this how you discipline your kids. Like when they do something wrong, this is how you discipline them." Like there was no conversation, and so like I learned that observationally this is the way that I should be disciplining her. Like she does something and I whoop her because that's the way that it goes, right? And so, like, I don't know, like, the turning point in that. But at some point I realized like I wasn't receiving the results that I wanted to get. Like, I was having to be, first of all, whooping kids mess your whole day up. Like, it is just not what it be in the cards for me. Like, I don't wanna, when you will keep you, like, you got an attitude. Like, you have a attitude the whole rest of the day. Like, you mad, you angry, trying to figure it out, like trying to come back, trying to shake back on your attitude and stuff like that. Like, no. So, like, it makes you aggressive. It makes you aggressive. Like, it make the kid aggressive. It make you aggressive. Everybody just aggressive and angry. And so, like, understanding and deciphering and paying attention to that, figuring out like what is the best way to discipline my child. Like, what is the best way? How does she receive love? How does she process love? And how does she also receive discipline? Because that has a uh it has an impact on the way that they receive discipline and if it's effective and if it works and all of that stuff. Like, it has an impact on that stuff. And so I'm just like, trying to figure out what are the things, like what is the best way. And when I did shift my disciplinary process, like, it was night and day. And like I said, not that she was a bad kid. She wasn't. She was a very well behaved kid. But it was just night and day in the effort that I had to put in order to get and see the results that I was looking for. And so I was grateful for that, and for that shift. I'm always evaluating, like, is this authority safe for me? Is this authority safe for my family? Is it safe for my kid? Is it safe for my friends? Is it safe for my husband? Like, I'm always evaluating, like, is this a safe place or do we need to be fighting in this place? Like, um if at any time when I'm evaluating, I evaluate that it's not safe, I'm coming with everything I got. Like, and that's for anybody. Like, anybody can get these problems. Like, I'm coming with it all. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not having it. I'm protecting them, me, we. Okay. So that's how I respond to those things. Like, I, in that scenario as a little girl, I felt unprotected. And so now in my adult life, I feel like I need to be protecting me and everybody. Like, if I'm just like, no, 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 this is not the way. No, 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 this is not what we're doing. This is not safe. This is not a good place for us. And so I'm adamant about the things that have hurt me and that it will not hurt them, which isn't always healthy because most of the time I draw those conclusions with observational learning, which is a limited ability, a limited learning style with no context. Like, I don't know what happened to transpire to get us to certain places or to get them to certain places. Honey, I'm gonna cut these two front braids. I'm gonna take them and cut them right off my face. Um, and so I don't know what happened and what transpired to bring us to that place and bring us to that level or whatever. But I'm just like, oh well, we hear what's up. Like, what's tea, sis? Like, what's going on? And so here I am, and sometimes I'm ready for war, but I'm trying to learn to take the time to understand, is this situation that situation? Like, moving from a space of this feels like that, so fight everybody, trying to get away from that response type, and that alertness of like, okay, this feels like this, so yeah, now it's fight time, it's go time. Or maybe your response isn't, this is that, or this feels like that, let me fight everybody. Maybe your response is, this feels like that, let me retreat. Or this feels like that, let me run away. Or this feels like that, let me shut down and isolate. Like, maybe those are your responses. Like, just because your response isn't, oh, this feels like that, let me fight everybody, it doesn't mean that isolation and shutting down and running away and being depressed, that those are appropriate response types either. Like, when something feels like that, we need to be investigating our feelings. And I think I talked about that a little bit in the last episode. We need to be reviewing and understanding, where did they come from? What is the target of that? Like, what is the trigger of that? So that we can get an understanding. And then also, maybe the people around you need to know, you know what I'm saying? It's at least the people that are closest to you. If you are that much triggered by something that has happened, like, you need to be able to communicate that stuff. And so that is why God calls us to let bitterness and wrath go, because if I am if I'm unable to get the right healing, then I am a slave to that. So it's like something happens and it triggers me. I don't have any control over that. And God doesn't want us to be slaves to those kinds of things. He doesn't want us to be slaves to our feelings and our anger and our wrath. Like, you can't control it. You know what I'm saying? And so He doesn't want us to be out of control. He wants us to be in full control of our feelings and our emotions. And so going back to my dad and my relationship with him, like, I about 7, so we fell out, right? So he was in my life from the time I was 3 until the time I was 18. We got into a really bad argument. Don't ask me why, I don't even remember. We got into a really bad argument when I turned 18, and cussed him out, hung up on him, and never turned back. Like, I was like, okay, that's it, I'm good. I'm not doing the toxicity. Like, I'm grown now. Okay, I'm real grown, and I ain't got to be dealing with that. I'm not finna be, you ain't finna be talking to me crazy. You ain't finna be yelling and screaming and raising your voice. I'm not for that. I'm grown. So I hung up on him and cut him right on out of my life, honey. And that was the end of that. Like, that was when I was 18. And so, like, I'm 35 now. So about 7-ish years ago, this was before COVID for sure. About 7-ish years ago. Like, I was just sitting in my car minding my own self business. Okay. And God was like, yeah, go ahead and reconcile that relationship with your daddy. And I was like, excuse me? You know, like, no. No, God, I don't want to. And so, like, literally, like, I had not talked to this man since that moment. Like, I had not talked to him since I was 18. And I hadn't talked to him in years. And so when I hadn't talked to him in years, I was cool with that. Like, I was perfectly fine with staying where I was at, leaving him where he was at. Honey, my cutoff hand was strong. Okay. The cutoff was strong within. And I didn't want no parts of that anyway. Like, I didn't want no parts of that toxicity and that toxic relationship. Now, that was cool until my unhealed self got married, and I had had a baby already. So I'm coming into my marriage now with who's going to be my daughter's stepfather. And now I'm trying to build a family on this broken foundation. Oh, yeah, just I just, when the message come back and minister to me, I just be upset about that. But yes, so here I am trying to build a family on this broken foundation that I needed to tear up. Like, I needed to tear this foundation up. I needed to um understand, like, what was going on, what was happening, what's the feelings and stuff like that. And so, like, me and my husband, we butt heads about discipline and his parenting style and all that stuff. He's very old fashioned. It's very triggering to me. Like, and he don't even be whooping, like, I don't think he's ever whooped Kennedy or wanted to or tried to or none of that stuff. Like, but he's just old fashioned in his ways. Like, he's just an old man. And so, but it's triggering to me. Like, it's triggering to me, and I'd be like, nah, 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 nah. No, I got it. Like, I'll take it from here, because I just don't want to feel, I don't want her to feel like, save me. My mom should save me. She should have saved me, but she didn't. And I don't want her to feel like that. And so, it's tough. Like, it's tough trying. And so I was cool with cutting my daddy out of my life and moving on and never thinking about it. Never thinking about it. And matter of fact, now I think I've been married for 7 years. man, God is amazing. Like he don't want us broken. Like I don't know if the reach out conversation happened before or after I was married, but God knew it was coming, right? And so like he wanted me to start building and reconciling that relationship so that it didn't have these impacts on my marriage. And I was hard headed, and didn't want to, and of course went kicking and screaming like always, honey. Um, and so, like but that would have been something that I could have overcome, And so now I'm instead of having overcome it, I'm overcoming it. And you know, man, that's good. That is good about that foundation. Jeez. So yeah, don't forget to tear it up, friend. But yeah, just tearing up that old foundation so that I could create a new foundation in my marriage. And so now, like, we still have those conversations, we still have those disagreements. We're still trying to agree on parenting style for our future children. Like, just trying to get to that space of healing that I should have already been on. And so, like I said, God had spoke to me and was like, go ahead and reconcile that relationship. And I was like, nah, I ain't doing it. Um, and so, of course, he stayed on me about it. And so eventually, I got his number and his information from my sister and, called him. And we've been talking ever since. Like, I haven't actually met up with him since that time, but we talk sporadically, a couple of times. And we've had some deep conversations. And so, because of that experience, it is a top priority for me, because of my life's experience, right? Like my experience with relationships, my experience with men, my experience seeking validation through those different channels. Um, like it is number one priority for me, for my daughter to be able to process and validate her emotions effectively, like to be able to put language to the things that bother her, to be able to create healthy boundaries, and to be able to communicate when people are breaching those boundaries, to say, hey, I don't like that, like don't do that, I don't like when you talk to me like that, like I don't like when you take my things, I don't like when you eat my food. Like I don't like that. It bothers me. Like don't do that. I want her to be able to always like process her emotions and communicate her emotions. Like that is top priority for me in my parenting. I want her to be able to come away from life and from our conversations being able to process emotionally what's happening around her, process emotionally what's happening with her, to her, for her, what's coming her way, what has happened in her past, what is going to happen in her future. Like I want her to be able to process those emotions and be able to communicate that in her relationships, in her relationship with me. I encourage her to communicate with me, tell me what's going on, tell me when I do things wrong, tell me when I cross boundaries that she has said. I encourage her to put in and enforce boundaries in her friendships. I encourage her to speak up for herself. Like I never want her to feel unprotected. Like she can't speak up for herself. Like I never want her to feel like that. I want her to embrace who she is and who she's developing and growing up as, so that she'll be able to communicate effectively. Like that's a top priority for me. And so the reason that that is so important to me is because when I grew up, I didn't have the opportunity to learn to develop and create language for the feelings that I had. Like it was very much so kids don't have feelings and kids don't have emotions. Like you go where I say go, you do what I say do, and that's just what it is. And so because of that, like I'm just now learning to put language to emotions and to create boundaries for myself and to tell people when I don't like something, or I feel the need to always be defending myself, like all the time. Like and I don't know how to always verbalize that appropriately or have that conversation or express my feelings in an effective manner. Like I immediately go up to anger and being mad because I feel like someone is trying to um suppress my voice, suppress my feeling, suppress me as a person, as a human, as a human being. And so I think that that is a primary reason why God doesn't want us to be a slave to that. Like why he wants us to let that thing go, like let that bitterness go. And maybe, and it's not just like forgetting and forgiving and forgetting, right? Like it is a matter of doing the work. Like when you come back from a trip, listen, I'm the queen of this. You come back from a trip, you got your luggage, and you slide that luggage over there in that corner, and them clothes are still in that luggage and in that bag. Like you gotta unpack that bag, friend. Like don't leave the bag there. Listen, I went to Miami a while ago and the bag is still there. Okay. Like the bag is still there. The clothes are still in the bag. Like I have unpacked nothing. And so I think that that's how we want to do our lives. Like we want to slide that baggage in that corner and just leave it there until we can't leave it there no more, right? Like, and so I want to encourage you guys to unpack and put it away. So put it away, friend. Like put it away for real. Like not hide it away, not tuck it away, not put it in the back behind something cute. And then it just is jumping out like a monster underneath the bed, okay, whenever you get triggered. Like put it away for real. Like unpack, go to counseling, have the conversations with the necessary people and the necessary parties so that you can grow from those situations, so that you can enhance your boundaries, your understanding of your boundaries, your emotions, so you can be comfortable in life, and so your kids don't have to grow up and heal from you. And they may still have things that they have to process, right? I don't think anyone is perfect, but I know for me, I'm definitely trying to mitigate the amount of healing that my daughter has to do from her experience with me as a parent. And so that can be tough. It can be difficult. It can be hard to unpack and open up some of those wounds that you believe are to be healed, but they're still sensitive. Like it's still a little tender there. So I think we definitely have to be intentional about um, putting it away, putting away that bitterness, putting away that anger, putting away that malice the right way. And so I think that is important for us to prepare our children for the way that life teaches us lessons, right? Like when things happen to us, when life be life in us, like nobody's beating on you, nobody is slapping on you. No, we should teach the consequences that are aligned with life so that they can know and not associate wrong or mistakes with pain. Like kids are human. Every time they make a mistake, they shouldn't be getting a whooping. Like is that I think, and that's where the evaluation comes in, right? Again, this is not like an anti whoop your kids post. This is more of a explore the alternative options of discipline and think about the effects that whooping your kids has on them. Like, do you want them to be fearful? Do you want them to grow up and have the effects of that? Like, what are other alternatives that you can do to get the results that you desire? Um, and not to your kids' detriment, not to for their mental anguish and stuff like that. So when life happens, like nobody ain't hitting on us, nobody ain't beating on us. Like we suffer the consequences of the mistakes that we make. And so I think that establishing good and healthy consequences for our children is really important. But I think too, like we have to take the time to step away and look at the things that have happened to us in our childhood and evaluate the things that can stay and the things that need to go. And so when I'm looking at, my parents, my daddy and my mom, and how they process things, like there are things I'm 100% sure that happened to them in their childhood, in their teenage years, in their adulthood that affect the way that they parented me. And because they may not have taken the time to step back and understand, hey, this may not be the way, or whooping kids may not necessarily get me the response that I'm looking for, right? So like for my dad, or for my daddy, he was on the streets. Like he got whoopings all the time, but he was in the streets. Like he talked about getting in trouble all the time and all of that stuff. Like and he was an angry man. Like I said, we had good times, but he was angry. Like, he didn't play, he didn't tolerate disrespect, all of that kind of stuff. And so that was for the streets, and that was for his kids at home. Like, it was the same. And so I think understanding and taking that time as a parent to evaluate and step back and say, maybe I shouldn't be responding this way. Like, maybe I shouldn't be whooping them all the time. Like, I don't want to be aggressive, I don't want to be angry. I want to love my children, I want to raise my children in love and affection, and I want them to have healthy responses and healthy households and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I want that for them. And so, like, understanding that for your kids, like, it's very important. And so maybe you are an adult, maybe you need to have a conversation with your parents, like, to discuss some of the things that happen. Like, I be stuck on this thing about the oldest, middle, and youngest child and the experiences and how they're different. Like, maybe you need to have a conversation about that. Like, I feel like you favored this one, or I feel like you treated them better. I felt like I was a problem child because of I was always getting in trouble, or I was misunderstood, or nobody took time, or nobody came to my games, or nobody, but you all went to this person's games or that person's games, or this person was the perfect child and they never got in trouble and they never got yelled at, but I was always in trouble. Like, really taking the time to unpack and look at how those things affect us in today's world. Like, how does it affect my responses? How does it affect what I do, how I proceed, what decisions I make, how I parent my kids, what jobs I take, what I do at work, how I respond in traffic, how I respond at the grocery store? Like, how does that stuff impact my life? Like, how does it? So, friend, put it away. Put it away the right way. Go in the bag. Get the clothes out the bag. Wash them. Put them up where they belong. So, unpack that baggage. Put it away. Be free from that bondage. Be free from the bondage of your childhood. Free the generations, right? Like, free them. Like, don't leave them bound to the things. I have a friend, she's a missionary, and she said, any giants that you don't slay, your kids are going to have to slay. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, I don't want my child to be trying to slay my giants. And so I think that's a large impact um of us not communicating, of us not allowing uh, for our testimonies to go down through the generations, like how we overcame. And so this is how things ravage and tear our families apart. Like, you'll look up and generationally, all of these things will be happening. And you like, oh my God, it's a curse. The family's cursed. But it's not. It's just us passing down the seeds. Like, we're just passing them down through our experiences. And so through observational learning, we look at our previous generations. We learn that, oh, this is the way that life goes, and then we just take it on. But at some point, we all have to be like, the book stops here. Like, this is where it's going to end. I'm not getting the results that I want to get anyway. So let me see how I can change things. Let me see how I can grow things. Let me see how I can be empowered. Let me see how I can grow my self-worth with new experiences. Let me see, what changes needs to take place and need to occur so that I can be better, and not just me, but we. Like, so we can be better. My children can be better. My spouse can be better. My friends can be better because we're healing. And so we just want to take that time to establish and explore the healing that God wants for us all, because He doesn't want us to be bitter. He doesn't want us to be angry. He doesn't want us to be malicious. He wants us to be forgiving. He wants us to be caring. He wants us to be tenderhearted and kind. Those are some of the things that the scripture said. And so those are the things that God wants for us. Like, love is our portion, not hate, not anger, um, not defeat. Definitely not defeat, because we are victorious. Yes. So thank you, friend, for joining. And I just want to make sure that you put it away. And also, if you haven't, tear up the foundation also. So as you're rebuilding a new house, a stable house that's on a good land and a good foundation, don't forget to tear up that old foundation, okay? Loosen up those old principles, get rid of them, uproot them, and start fresh, start new. Talk to your children, let them express themselves, give them the opportunity to talk to you about how they feel and their emotions and how they feel when certain things happen and when certain things don't, so that you can also grow. Like, it is an opportunity to be free. Just remember, when hurt doesn't heal, it becomes a cycle. So remember, friend, put it away. Oh God, we thank you. We love you and we adore you. We thank you for this moment and this time. We know that it is not a coincidence that we have ended up here today, that we have ended up on this live, that I have ended up on this podcast. Um, and I thank you for the intentionality, God, behind what you have to say to us. So I pray that every word, God, lands where you need it to land, that every person, God, feels what you need them to feel, and that they walk away from this space feeling your love, feeling your honor, feeling your care, feeling like you have not left them alone, feeling like they can be victorious, God. And so we thank you for all of the things that you are doing and that you're about to do right now. And we love you and we honor you in Jesus' name. Amen. Put it away, friend. See you next week.